Hi everybody, welcome to today's video. We're talking about something that's a little bit new. I know a lot of you guys that follow me, whether it be on Instagram or Facebook, kind of are familiar with some of my content about thyroid dysfunction, about Graves' disease, about viral load, digestive issues, and weight loss, but I've actually never shared this topic with you guys before. And because there's a lot of confusion around this, I wanted to address it from a really in-depth perspective, but also very easy. So for those of you that don't know me, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Elise Tercy. I practice functional medicine here in New York, and I do work very intimately with nutrition. And the topic for today is all about body composition changes and strategic implementation of dietary strategies that can help you change your body composition. That was kind of a mouthful, but how do we get you to change your body composition? You probably have heard it's calorie counting, right? You got to count your calories. You got to be making sure that you're not consuming fat, no fatty products, no meats, no egg yolks, none of that stuff. That's the way we lose weight, right? No. So for those of you that think that calorie counting and that fat are still bad, you're living in the 80s, or maybe you're living in the 90s. I forget what era that was popular, but forget what you think that you know about dieting and body composition, because I'm here to share with you guys a strategy that I use in clinical practice with my patients, a strategy that I've also personally used in my life to change my body composition. Now, this is not just for people looking to build body mass, looking to put on muscle, but this is actually a really nice strategy for changing your body composition when you want to lose fat tissue, when you want to lose weight. What am I talking about? Macros. So macro counting. And no, I'm not talking about IIFYM. We'll talk about that. But I am talking about macro counting. So what is macro counting? Macro counting is an actual technique where we read food labels and we count the number of grams for your macronutrients. Now, macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fats. Those are the three macronutrients found in food, and we actually can track them or count them in gram versions to help us change our body composition. And this is a really effective strategy. I use this more so than counting calories, and here's why. Considering everybody has heard about calorie counting, why haven't we heard about macro counting before? Well, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know why we don't hear about macros. I think probably the answer is that we haven't come a long way with our nutrition strategies for weight loss. It's the same thing that people think that you should still be doing. So if you're only counting calories, you're missing the boat. If you're working with someone that's only counting your calories, you're missing the boat. And I'm going to share with you why that is. But the point of the story is that we don't count calories, we count macros. So remember that concept. We don't count calories, we count macros, and fat doesn't make you fat. Carbs and sugar do. So those are two concepts I want you guys to always keep in the back of your mind as we walk through this process of why we count macros. So we talked about macros, what they are: protein, carbs, and fat. They are the building blocks of our body. We actually use protein, carb, and fat to build things in us. We use proteins to build muscle. Hair is dead protein, biotin, collagen, keratin. We use fat to build our hormone systems. Our neurotransmitters are all fatty molecules. We actually produce sex hormones from fatty molecules like cholesterol, which is a very fatty, waxy molecule. You're missing that there is a cat sitting right here. You're out of the frame, but that's okay. But we actually use all things fat, carb, and protein to build. Carbohydrates do provide energy sometimes. So a lot of you guys know I am a proponent of doing different nutritional diets for people. I hate that word diet, but doing different nutritional protocols, if you will, for people. And it's not that I'm giving carbs a bad rap, but you know, we do use them for certain things. I don't want to get up on a tangent. So we use protein, we use carb, and we use fat. Those are the macros. When you're looking at a food label, that's what you want to identify. You want to look at, what does this label say in terms of protein, carbs, and fats? I don't care what the calories say. You are not a furnace. The reason that's a very important concept or topic to know is that just because you put calories in your body doesn't mean that you're able to burn those calories as effectively as you normally would under a regular circumstance if you have metabolic dysfunction. An easier way of saying that is if you have metabolic dysfunction like thyroid dysfunction, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, a sluggish thyroid, if you're dealing with viral infection, if you're dealing with your pancreas not producing enough insulin, if you're dealing with syndrome X, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, prediabetes, all of those are metabolic in nature. If you're dealing with hormonal imbalance, it's also metabolic in nature. If you're dealing with painful periods, that also falls into a metabolic condition. The point of the story is that the calories that you put in your body when you have metabolic dysfunction aren't burned the way that we think that they are. So, it used to be this calorie equation of what's my total energy expenditure, what's my basal metabolic rate, what are all these factors that go into this equation that tell me my general calorie intake. All of that is not factoring in disease, dysfunction, and damage. It's not factoring inflammation. So we don't count calories for that reason, because what you put in doesn't equate to what you burn if there's disease, okay? I have a little list here of just stuff I want to share with you guys. So if I'm looking down, it's just because I want to make sure I'm talking some of the highlighted points. So we talked about what are macros, protein, carbs, and fats. Where do we find them? So I brought a protein powder here. This is a brand, Zymogen. This is a brand that I use in clinical practice. Zymogen is an awesome brand. It does follow GMP, third-party GMP certified. It does have all methylated forms of vitamins. So this isn't a video to sponsor, although I should be sponsored by them, about Zymogen or endorse them, but they're a great brand. And the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because where you find the macros are actually on the label. Now, you likely won't be able to see this because it's not too close, but I will put a label in front of you guys so that you can take a look. There are so many things on this label. So if I was someone that wasn't used to counting macros, I might look at this and be like, what am I counting here? Like, there's so much stuff. What you're counting, your eyes are going to protein, carb, and fat. That's where your eyes go to. So how many grams of protein? This one has 15 grams of protein. How many grams of carbs? This one has 7 carbs. And how many grams of fat? 4.5 grams of fat. I've just calculated my macros. So I've just calculated not what my macros for my body should be, but what macros are actually in this. I noticed I didn't mention calories. Calories don't matter. Okay, calories don't matter from a metabolic standpoint. So that's what we're doing, is we're tracking macros. Now, all macros can be found on food labels, unless of course you're dining out, then you might not have access to the food label in front of you. Why would I bother to count my macros according to my little questionnaire? You'd bother to count your macros when you want to lose weight. You'd want to count your macros when you're trying to change your body composition and maybe put on lean muscle tissue. You'd want to track your macros to see if there's a way that you can make your body and the way it looks different depending on what you're eating, because remember, these are the building blocks of our cells. So we track macros usually when we want to shift someone's body composition, whether that be add body weight to them, add muscle mass to them, or drop down their body fat percentage, drop down their adipose percentage, whatever it might be. So that's why we would do it. How do I know where to start? So a lot of you guys, I know we're asking, I'm even doing this video because I got a lot of comments on my Instagram. If you're not following, I'll link my Instagram here, but people wanted to know, because I talked about me tracking macros again for my own health goals. And people were like, what's a macro? How do I know? You really want to track your macros first before we change your macros. Meaning, if this is all new to you and you're not sure where to go with this, suggestion A is get familiar with labels. So start looking at what are the protein, carbs, and fat. Step 2 is you're going to want to do a little behind the scenes prep work. What does that look like? You're going to want to get an app. You can download a free app. MyFitnessPal is the one that I recommend. There's Carb Manager. There's so many apps out there that can track your macros for you, but I like MyFitnessPal. That's the one I personally use. You do want to get a scale, a food scale. Get one at Bed Bath & Beyond, get one from Amazon, get one at a local shop, but the scale will tell you what your macros are, or I should say the scale won't tell you the macros, but it will give you a weight so that you can find out what your macros are. So you also want to make sure that you have patience, that you're bringing your patience with you, because this is time consuming. You do want to have patience with this, and you want to realize that you're not going to learn to track your macros overnight. It's going to take time. It's just the way it works. And you start with the basics. So if you're out there watching this wondering, I do want to lose weight, I do want to change the way I look, I don't think the calorie counting concept is working for me. And I know that's true for a lot of women. I hear from a lot of women that they're saying, I'm barely eating, but I'm gaining weight. Well, there might be something to what you're eating, or there might be something else going on, underlying conditions. Okay, so macros can also help support underlying conditions. We actually use them clinically to help support hormone systems, to help clean the liver. So we actually can use this concept not just in the fitness realm, not just for the sake of changing your composition, but actually to improve your cells and your basic biology. Okay, so we can use this technique and structures for other things. So what do you need to track? You do need a scale. Okay, I'll show you my scale. I'll link it here. You do need an app. That's a requirement. You can get a free app, like I said, MyFitnessPal, and you need time and patience, because this is not something that you're going to learn overnight, and people sometimes get frustrated and then they don't do it and then they stay stuck. So don't get there. Just understand walking into this process that it's a process and it's something that you have to learn to do. Now, for those macro trackers out there, we are surprisingly good at knowing what foods have specific macros. So you might be telling somebody or sharing with a friend, like I know me and Dr. Ackerman, we kind of go back and forth with food groups, and we can spit off macros to each other because we've looked at the labels. So you're going to learn over time what macros are, and you're going to know what they are just automatically. You're going to be like a little tracker yourself. Okay, so you'll know that. Now, does the quality of the macros count in the sense of, if I'm eating, for example, salmon versus wild salmon versus farmed salmon? Well, let's just say that you're comparing two foods that are both the same weight. They're 4 ounces, 112 grams, 112 grams. Do their macros vary if it's both the same serving size? The answer is absolutely they do, because food that's not processed well, or food that's not organic, does look different than food that's regular. They have different macros. So the fatty acids that are in, for example, salmon, and the amount of protein in farmed versus wild are totally different, but depending on how they're raised. So the quality of macros does matter, and I would always endorse eating good quality food. Absolutely. If you're not someone that can, do the whole organic thing, there are certain things that should absolutely be organic. Anything that's an animal product. So for example, meat, chicken, eggs, definitely organic. Definitely. Vegetables and fruit, there are seasonal pickings. The Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 can help to share with us which ones should be organic. It's a little guideline to tell us, but yes, the quality of your food will change the macros. So it's not just gram per gram, serving size per serving size. The quality can actually change your macros as well. So does the quality of the macros count? Yes, there's entirely different nutrition for each food group depending on how it's processed and raised. Now, when you're tracking this, like I said, my best recommendation, start with just tracking. Just get comfortable with labels and just put things in your app. Okay. The cool thing about the apps is you can scan things in. So this has a barcode, as do all foods. Where's the barcode? Okay, so this has a barcode on it. You can scan on your phone the barcode on an item that's packaged, and it pulls up the macros for you. So how convenient is that you can just go scanning things that are pre-packaged for you. How close should you be? So let's just say that you're starting to track, you've got your app, your food scale, you're ready to get started. What macros should you pick? That's the hardest part. Really, that's where you'd want to maybe connect with someone that can guide you and support you. But as a rule of thumb and as a baseline, just start tracking. Just start putting in what you're eating in terms of your protein, carbs, and fats, because over time, you're going to get a sense of, oh, I'm averaging around 75 grams of protein. I'm averaging around 165 grams of carbs, give or take a few. You're going to get a sense of where you are, and you don't know where you're going until you know where you are. Okay, you don't know where you're going until you know where you are with the macros. So get a sense of where you are, and then you probably do want to work with somebody or do some research about what should my intake be of my protein, carbs, and fats. So I guide my patients to that. Most of my patients know how to track macros. They're familiar with it. We use that in their strategies. And really in the beginning phases, they just journal for me. And then we go over which foods have protein, carbs, and fats. It's a process. It's, like I said, it's not something you're going to learn overnight. So how close do I need to be if I am tracking my macros? I would say within 5 to 7 grams or right on target. Realistically, right on target is where you'd want to be. So you set your macro goals. I would recommend always in grams. The percentages get confusing for people, so always grams, okay? Most of the macros by default, all of them are in grams with the exception of sodium, which is not a macro. But I'm just reading here from my little notes that I made. And I want to talk about this actually at the end, this binder, because I feel like this is so genius for goals, for goal setting. But within 5 to 7 grams, because if you start getting sloppy, if you start spilling over, then you're really not tracking appropriately. And so you really want to try to hit those goals that were made for you. I would say if you're over 5 grams, it also depends on the macro. So if you're over, 5 to 7 grams, each macro might have a little bit more weight to it. So for example, if you spill over in your carbohydrates, well, carbs do retain fluid. So for 1 gram of carb, we actually hold on to 3.4 grams of water approximately. So if you spill over on your carbs by 10 grams, you will be fluidy. You will gain more body fat on the scale. At least it looks that way, but it's really just water retention. Okay, so carbohydrates do hold on to more water. When you spill over on each macro, it can have a different health effect and a different body composition effect. You might notice that. You might be urinating more frequently. You might be thirstier depending on what macro you spilled over on. So I would say try to hit your macros. They are goals for a reason. They are set as numbers for specific reasons. That's the ideal way. If you happen to say I'm spilling over or I went over, each of them is a little bit different. Try not to go over on, I would say, your fat and your carbs. Protein, if you go plus or minus, you're better off going a little bit more over than under, but they are weighted a little bit different. What are common mistakes that people make with tracking macros? That was another question that was asked, so I wanted to include it here. The common mistake is that people aren't honest with themselves. They're just not. So 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, they don't weigh it out. And if you've ever weighed out a tablespoon, I don't endorse eating peanuts by default. Let's call it almond butter. I'm just using that for an example. But if you've ever taken a scoop of what you thought was a serving size of a tablespoon, the serving size for most nut butters is 2 tablespoons. But let's just use an example of 1. You are so far off. It's incredible. All of us are. It's not just you. So what ends up happening is that you think that it's a tablespoon and you track it on your scale and you're like, oh, wow, I was off. So the common mistake that people make is that they're not realistically honest. You have to track. You have to track. I was working with a friend that was doing this and they were guesstimating everything. And I'm like, you're not tracking anything. Don't bother with this because you're not really doing it. You don't even know. You're not even in the same brands of things. You're not even like picking the same brand. So that's the common mistake, is that people aren't always honest with the reality of their tracking abilities. Another common mistake is people sometimes forget to put their nutrition in. They're like, oh, I forgot what I did. I recommend doing it the minute that you eat. So you eat, you put it in right away. Don't wait till the end of the day and then go back. You might forget. That's just my personal preference. I like to do it as I'm eating if I do this. I don't do this year round. You get good at this. So you don't really have to do it year round depending on what your goals are. If you're very structured, very strict, if you have some serious goals, then yeah, you would probably implement this a little bit longer. Can you eat out and be successful with macros? That was another question that somebody had asked. This one was from Facebook, but not really. That's really hard to track. Unless you're getting the actual nutrients from the restaurant, it is difficult to actually know what you're eating because often they're putting in different sauces. They're not telling you how much they're putting in. There's a lot of times additives that they're using. So I would say that if you're really trying to implement this strategy, eat at home for the week to get comfortable with it. Eat at home for 2 weeks to get comfortable with it, however long it takes you. But when you're eating out and dining out, you're not going to get the reality of the macros unless it's a really clean place and you know verbatim that they always use 4 ounces. It's a butcher's cut. Other than that, I don't think so. I know when I dine out, they don't give a lot of protein. Most restaurants by default give 3 ounces, not 4. So it's hard to track when you're not really sure what's actually in everything, even if you have the ingredients. You don't have the amounts and you don't know what other secret things they're putting in terms of oils. So that's really all of the questions I got about macro tracking. And like I said, I like this technique more so than counting calories. I'm not a counting calorie person. I don't endorse that by any means. And one thing I want to share to kind of just bring the point home is that you can have 100 calories and another thing that's 100 calories, but their macros are entirely different. So call it 100 calories here, 100 calories here. Well, what does it matter? 100 calories, right? No. This product might have 100 calories and 15 grams of sugar. This product might have 100 calories and only 3 grams of sugar. The body will be processing them totally different. So not all calories are created equal, and that's a big reason we track macros. Okay, and then I don't want to really talk about IIFYM. I don't think that's something that you guys want to know about or should know about. It's a sloppy version of tracking macros. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't eat donuts and pizza and things that are not good for your body. So we won't even get into that because I don't want to talk about that. There's no reason to talk about that. So that's really it about the macros. I hope that gives you a little bit more information. I know that you guys really were interested to know, like, what is this whole concept? And I'm hoping that gives you a little bit of a background about macros and why we use them in practice and why we use them for body weight changes and shifting our hormones and why they're more effective than counting calories. If you take one thing home from this video, it's just that you're not a furnace and you're not going to count calories anymore as a strategy, guys. It's journal. Get a journal. Definitely get a journal because these are awesome. I find that when I journal, this is not about journaling your macros. You could start journaling your nutrition, but you will have to transfer it into an app. But I do find that I'm so much more effective when I'm journaling things in my life. Totally off topic, I know, but this is like my accountability journal where I write my daily goals and I check things off. So for today, I actually wrote my Saturday journal. So Saturday, I worked out this morning at 9 o'clock. My gym is only doing workouts every odd hour. So 7 o'clock was not about to happen on a Saturday, but I did work out at 9 and 11 o'clock. Create the macro counting video for everybody that wanted to know a little bit more information about this. And then we've got a full day worth of stuff coming up. So get yourself a journal. It's amazing how much you will get so much stuff done quicker, and you're just going to be more productive with your day. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this was helpful as usual. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.